What's going on YouTube? It's Tej back again with another video, and today I am giving you our first of the 4 NFC divisions as we go through our way too early 2022-2023 regular season record predictions. Hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. If you do, be sure to hit that like button. It would help me out a ton. If you're new around here, want to see more football content in your life, just hit that subscribe button. And of course, join me for our conversation down below in the comment section. Today we're talking the NFC West. Tell me what you think about this division. Is it the best in the NFL's? Maybe second fiddle behind the AFC West? Who do you think comes down the division crown? How do you think it plays out 1 through 4? Anything you have to say about this division, I'd love to hear your thoughts. And we've already done the AFC side, so some of these games have already been spoken for, so to speak. So we've already talked about this week 1 game for the Rams, but kind of hitting on LA just as a team. Pretty good squad. They did a good job mitigating some of the damage as pieces are leaving. I'd argue maybe they got better from Robert Woods, especially considering he's coming off of an injury. And Woods was set to make 16.25 against the cap. They got Allen Robinson for $15 million a year, so they might have gotten better and saved a little bit of money. Do lose Von Miller, and that's going to be a tough, piece of that front seven, especially that pass rush to replace. But you still have Leonard Floyd, you still have Aaron Donald, who you just shelled out big money to. Same thing with Cooper Kupp. So this team is going to go where their stars take them. So you lose Miller, but all in all, this team I think is in a healthy spot. You also lose Andrew Whitworth, but I think Joseph Noteboom showcased what he could be last year, especially in the playoffs against the Bucs. So let's go ahead and start talking about the Rams regular season. I think they do win week 1 against the Bills. I have to rehash this a little bit. Go back to my AFC East video. But, reigning Super Bowl champs, playing at home. They won the Super Bowl at home. I'll give them the bone there. I would say the Bills are a better team, but otherwise, Buffalo in this situation, if they give them this win in week 1, they're 16-1. I don't know if that's quite in the realm of, true possibilities. So I'll give the Rams that win week 1. They're better than the Falcons. And I'll have them taking this week 3 win against the Cardinals. I think it's going to be tough playing, at Arizona. The Cardinals have been a team that gets out to hot starts, and maybe they do the same thing this year. But what does that offense look like without DeAndre Hopkins? That is such a huge question mark. And, how much easier does that make the role of the Rams defense slowing down that passing attack, right? Imagine if DeAndre Hopkins out there. Well, then Jalen Ramsey's marking him up. And then it's like, okay, who has an answer for Marquise Hollywood Brown? Now, granted, this is a Rams team that runs a lot of too high coverages, primarily cover 4 defense. And that, stayed the same last year for Raheem Morris, the new defensive coordinator going into his second year. But all that to say, now you don't have to worry about DeAndre Hopkins, right? Like Jalen Ramsey can keep his focus on Marquise Hollywood Brown, and then is A.J. Brown going to beat you? I mean, A.J. Green, A.J. Brown probably could beat you. A.J. Green, is he going to beat you? I'm not so confident in that, so I'll have the Rams starting out 3-0. I'll have the 49ers picking up a win at home. Ultimately, I do see that as a series split coming off a bye. Let's have the Rams pick up a win against the 49ers in Week 8. Those two teams, I mean, they're two of the best teams in the NFC in my eyes. Maybe the Rams are a slightly better roster, and you feel a little bit more comfortable with where their quarterback situation's at right now. But all in all, two of the best teams, and there's a reason they played each other in the NFC Championship game last year, right? So I think it's going to be a regular season split between those two sides. Rams at home, I'll give them the edge over the Cowboys. But if Dallas is playing similar football to where they were at the beginning of last year, that game is going to be a very fun one to watch. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Cowboys go into LA and come away with a win. And I'll have the Rams picking up a win before they go on their bye against Carolina. I mean, just two teams that different ends of the spectrum. Not to tear down Panthers fans, but Super Bowl contender, team in the middle of pseudo rebuild. Call it a full-fledged rebuild, if we're being honest with ourselves. So not really a fair matchup there. I'll have the Bucs getting some revenge from the postseason loss last year against the Rams, and the regular season loss for that matter. Last year, Week 3 in LA. This year they're playing in Tampa, cross-country travel. And, that advantage, especially for the home team, has kind of been mitigated by win percentages. Doesn't loom as big of an advantage, but I do feel it a little bit more when it's West Coast teams go to the East Coast versus the other way around. So maybe the Bucs will get out to a hot start. Rams lag behind. That's enough to propel the Bucs to a win in Week 9. And the Cardinals could definitely steal one of these games. And by this Week 10 matchup, you're talking about DeAndre Hopkins being back in the lineup. This will totally be dependent on what brand of football is Arizona playing, right? Are they playing their peak, kind of what they were at the beginning of last year, that brand of Cardinals football? Because then, I can see this being a regular season series split, especially now that you have DeAndre Hopkins back on the field, assuming he is healthy after he returns from the suspension. I have a hard time buying into Cliff Kingsbury. I have a hard time buying into consistency. And, that's just the external stuff. Even on the field, sure, DeAndre Hopkins back in Week 10. who in that secondary for Arizona has got an answer for Allen Robinson or Cooper Kupp? I don't know. I have a hard time thinking the Cardinals defense could be reliably able to make stops against that Rams offense. So I'll take the Rams in a regular season split. In New Orleans, I think this is a sneaky. We'll give New Orleans a win here. Obviously, predicting these weird, quirky, upset games is really difficult, and I tried to do it a little bit last year. My way too early season predictions ended up being pretty much wrong on all of them, but there's going to be games you look at in the schedule and be like, wow, remember when they lost to them in the middle of the season? That was kind of weird, right? I could see this being one of those where I think the Saints are a playoff caliber team, maybe one of the 6 or 7 seed contenders in the NFC. You would look at the Rams and say they're a better team, but New Orleans at home, that defense is tough. You still have Dennis Allen there. I could see the Saints winning in a defensive, grinded out type of game there against the Rams. You already talked about Week 12, but this is a really fun matchup, and this could easily be flipped back the other way, but I am so excited for Rams, Chiefs. Let those offenses go at it. I hope there's little to no defense in there. And if there is defense, I want it to be a Jalen Ramsey interception, Aaron Donald sacks. Sacks and picks, the only defense I want to see in that game. And then I'll have the Rams taking both games from the Seahawks. We'll talk about Seattle here in a little bit. I think this is a team that understands where their roster is. I like their offseason and specifically their draft in this past year, but that's kind of putting pieces into place. And think about what we were talking about with the Lions last year, where it's like, okay, well, you can kind of see what it's molding into, but it's just not complete yet. I have a feeling I'll be saying a lot of the same things about Seattle this upcoming year. And of course, that depends on injuries, right? DK Metcalf's not out there, then that offense is going to look a whole lot worse, right? So last game to talk about, and we'll kind of hit on some of these Week 17 and 16 matchups for the Rams as well. I'll have the Packers picking up a win at home. That's a tough one to call at this point, because the reason I'm going with the Packers at this point is by Week 15, I hope to see that Aaron Rodgers has figured out what his go-to option is, what that wide receiver room does for him. Like, who's his deep threat? Who's his check down guy? 3rd and 3, need to move the sticks. Who's he looking towards? It's probably a random Cobb spot, but all that to say, I'm hoping that, the newcomers and the chemistry has built up by this time of the year, and I'll take Green Bay with a win at home, and that puts the Rams at 13-4, and that's going to be a tough mark to beat throughout the rest of the NFC West. Let's flip over to the San Francisco 49ers. I am doing this with the assumption that Trey Lance is the starting quarterback. I just don't know how you can move heaven and earth and then not start him in year 2. I'd like to think that Jimmy Garoppolo would have been moved if not for that shoulder surgery. But then, again, I bring up the question all the time. If your plan was to move on from him, sure, you like to get an asset back. You like to get a draft pick, but now it's past the draft. And think about what that $25 million in cap space could have done to maybe retaining a Lincoln Tomlinson, which that interior offensive line with no Alex Mack now that he's retired is a huge question mark. Maybe one more corner. Maybe bringing back Jaquiski Tart. Whatever that money would have gone to, it's interesting. And they could still use that money for the extensions of a Joey or Nick Bosa or a Deebo Samuel, and that's signing bonus upfront money. And that would be smart. And if they do that, great. It worked out well. But I always wonder about, just release Jimmy Garoppolo, swallow those pills, keep Lincoln Tomlinson, add another piece to the team. How much better does that make that roster? Only time will tell, right? But I'll have the 49ers starting out the year 2-0, win against Chicago, win against Seattle. I think the Bears are going to be one of the worst teams in football. I think Seattle's going to be right there with them. So not really a fair matchup, but a couple of early wins to start the year for the 49ers. I already talked about Week 3, that loss to the Broncos. That one could definitely shake out in a couple different ways, but Denver is such a tough place to play at, especially early in the years. You're still kind of building up your conditioning. I'll take the Broncos at home there. I've already talked about this Week 4 game in this video. 49ers are better than the Panthers. I don't think I need to talk about that much. And I'll take the 49ers, making it a eventually 4-game win streak between weeks 4 through, or 3-game win streak 4 through 6, with that middle win coming against Carolina, and then ending it off with a win against the Falcons. Again, I just don't think those two teams are in the same spot. And then Chiefs, I just think they're a little bit better of a football team. And even with San Francisco bringing in a Charvarius Ward and some of the questions around the Kansas City wide receiver room, Pat Mahomes is going to sling it. And, what's the response there for San Francisco? It's realistically going to be hoping that your pass rush can make a big enough impact in this game, maybe force a forced fumble, make Pat Mahomes antsy in the pocket, maybe trying to make him uncomfortable and force a couple bad throws, create some turnovers that way. That's totally plausible, but Chiefs also have a really solid offensive line. So I'll say a battle between best on best. I'll go with Kansas City. In Week 7, we've already talked about that Week 8 game. Then you have your bye week, and because of that bye, I think it's a really solid time. San Francisco scores a win against another California team with the LA Chargers. I think they're going to be two of the best teams in the NFL, so that's going to be a really fun one to watch. But I'll give the 49ers the edge because they're at home. And then we get to the Cardinals. And I don't know if Arizona's going to get dogged by everyone in the division. We'll call this one a split. Let's give Arizona the win at home, and then we'll do the same thing for the 49ers in the regular season finale in Week 18. I think these two teams are a little closer. I think there's a degree of separation between the Rams and the 49ers, and then a couple degrees between the 49ers and the Cardinals. That being said, those two are closer in my eyes than where the Cardinals and the Rams are. So I'll give Arizona a bone there, and these are two teams that seemingly play a lot of close games over the past couple of years, so I would expect nothing less this year. I'll have the 49ers picking up a win at home against New Orleans. We talked about that with the Rams, trying to predict an upset win there for New Orleans, but this occasion they're on the road, and it's tough to play in San Francisco. That's always a passionate fan base, and they come out strong. So I'll give the 49ers one there at home, and in Week 13, there's just a better football team. Now, we'll see what Tua develops into. If he takes a huge step forward, we might be talking about a different result here in Week 13, despite Miami being on the road. And against the Bucs, at this point, I feel like I'm going to have Tampa go 17-0. But I'll say Brady scores one against the team he grew up idolizing, going back home. And I feel really good about that wide receiver core. And again, the question needs to be asked: who in that secondary for San Francisco is coming up with an answer? And that offensive line for Tampa Bay is solid enough, I think, to slow down that pass rush. Now, Donovan Smith versus Nick Bosa could cause a little bit of an issue for Tampa, but I think that Brady and Byron Leftwich and company will be able to come up with just enough answers in response. And then on the other side of the football, again, Trey Lance, going to be his first full year starting, I presume, at this point. And some of those mistakes might show against a great defensive coordinator and a defensive mind as the head coach in Todd Bowles. So I'll give the edge there to Tampa Bay. And I'll have Thursday Night Football. I tend to lean towards the home team as a little bit of a bias here, but it's not too far to travel for San Francisco, and 49ers are just a better team. And then San Francisco, Saturday football. This is the best time of the year. When you start seeing NFL games on Saturday, that's my favorite time. And I think San Francisco is just better than the 49ers. And the Commanders' offensive line's not bad, but this is a game where that pass rush, I could see Carson Wentz getting uncomfortable in the pocket and start chucking it to the other team. So I'll have the 49ers picking up a win there in Week 16. And then in Week 17, them and the Raiders could be a pretty close matchup there, but I'll say, and I'll trust, the scheme kind of coming together for Kyle Shanahan. And specifically, I think that rushing attack could cause a lot of problems to the Raiders, where they have made huge strides, right? You added Chandler Jones, but that run defense is still going to be a concern. And if you can't stop the San Francisco rushing attack, you're kind of playing behind the 8 ball from that point onward. And we already talked about Week 18 for San Francisco. So I have the 49ers going 12-5. Let's go ahead and move on to the Cardinals. Right now, 2-7. I promise you're going to see some wins here, including one in Week 3 against the Panthers. But first, we've already kind of hit on a couple of these games, but the Chiefs, they're just a better team. I'm sorry, they just are. And also Week 1 through 6, no DeAndre Hopkins. That makes it that much more difficult, and that's kind of why I erred on the side of the Raiders. More firepower for Vegas, so I went with them. We already talked about this Rams game as well. And then the Eagles and the Cardinals. I think the Eagles are a better team right now. And when it comes to the playmakers and those on the outside, A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith versus, Hollywood Brown and A.J. Green, yeah, I'll go with the Eagles there. And also, I trust Philadelphia's defense a little bit more too. And, Gannon, their defensive coordinator, may not be, this unbelievable guru who schemes up pressure, does stuff you've never seen before, but much more in the line of soft zone, limiting big plays, keeping the football in front of you. And you do that against this Arizona offense, especially once you get inside the 20, get in that red zone. I feel like it's going to be really hard for this Arizona team to turn 3 into 7 in that proposition, especially against that Eagles defense that has a beefed up defensive line. So that's just kind of the way I'm seeing it in this exact moment. But I'll take the Eagles with a road win there. I'll have the Cardinals picking up a win against the Seahawks, but I do think that's going to be a road and road split. It could be a home and home split for all it matters. It's a win for both sides, so it doesn't really matter for this exercise. But I think Seattle by far and away is the weakest team in the division. We're talking about Geno Smith as a starting quarterback in the division with Matt Stafford, Kyler Murray, and then Trey Lance / Jimmy Garoppolo. We'll see. But that being said, this is a division that plays itself tough, and the division games are always kind of played tough. So I'll have the Seahawks picking up one win against Arizona. And I'll have the Cardinals picking up a win at home Thursday Night Football. Again, I'm a little biased towards Thursday night home teams. A little bit of a travel there for New Orleans, but I like the ability to not have to travel far coming from Seattle, getting back home, and a chance to make it back-to-back wins, garner some momentum. This is a tough one because I kind of lean towards Minnesota, but that being said, I think Arizona's tackle play on the offensive line is pretty solid, so it negates a huge advantage in my eyes for the Vikings with the likes of Danielle Hunter and Zadarius Smith. I like that pass rush, but then that secondary is worrisome, and by now you're talking about DeAndre Hopkins being back and on the field, and week 7 is his true return, then week 8, still getting himself back in it. Maybe week 7's a little quiet, right? First week back, maybe week 8 is an opportunity for him to really explode, and is Pat Pete coming up with the answer there? Probably not. This could be a Pat Pete revenge game for all I know, though. So I'll take the Cardinals 1-1 on the road there. And part of this is also difficult because you look at the AFC West. I have the Raiders going 10-7 last place, and they have a 3-3 division record. And I think something is possible there for Arizona, but I also think that the NFC West is a lot better than majority, if not every other NFC division. So the non-conference and non-division games, I think are going to be an area for the Arizona Cardinals to kind of make up some ground. So just talked about week 8, and then week 9 we've already talked about with Seattle. Week 10 have already been discussed, 11, and then week 12, I think the Chargers are a little bit more of a complete football team. J.C. Jackson, if he takes away DeAndre Hopkins, what other answers are truly there? I guess Hollywood Brown could be in the mix for some big plays, but I'll take the Chargers right now. Especially considering getting to this time of the year, you start getting really uncomfortable talking about the Cardinals. The last 2 seasons, they've had, pretty devastating downfalls towards the end of the regular season. The Cardinals still made the playoffs last year, but then that bad play continued in the wild card where they got spanked by the Rams. So I'm hoping Arizona is playing better football by this time of the year, but based off what we know, a late season decline could certainly be imminent. So I have a loss to the Chargers. Bye week, they could certainly beat the Patriots. I think those two teams are pretty even, if not maybe the Cardinals slightly better, mostly because you look at the playmakers on the outside. I trust DeAndre Hopkins by far and away a lot more than anything that the Patriots can throw at you. Also, what does that New England defense look like? Probably going to be a lot more zone heavy considering, Malcolm Butler, who's primarily been a man-to-man coverage corner throughout his career, but he and Jalen Mills, your slot as your starting outside corners. That signals to me you're going to see a lot of cover for, a lot of soft zone this upcoming year for New England. So that might cause some issues taking away the big playability of this Arizona offense. But, that being said, Malcolm Butler versus DeAndre Hopkins, yeah, I'll go with the Cardinals. Or, that could be the avenue to take the Cardinals there. But I'll stick with my pick here, and I'll take New England despite them being on the road on Monday Night Football. Bounce back win for the Cardinals. Then you could kind of look at week 14 and 15, maybe flip it the other way around. So lose a game maybe in some Cardinals fans' eyes they shouldn't, and then they win a game that I think a lot of people's eyes, they would say, oh, well, the Cardinals aren't as good as the Broncos. So goes 1-1 there. And then week 16, Tampa Bay is going to be one of the best teams in football, and I think they'll take advantage of the Cardinals here. But then a win week 17, they're just better than the Falcons. And then we talked about week 18 with the loss to the 49ers and a 7-10 finish the regular season. That feels about right. If I were to just throw out a record prediction without actually going through the slate, 7-10 is probably pretty close to what I would have pegged it at. And the last team we'll talk about, Seattle Seahawks. They're 1-10 as of right now with one win against the Cardinals. I think this team should embrace a 3-14 type of season. Get one of the top tier quarterbacks in next year's draft, assuming the class pans out like we hope it does. Like, go land a CJ Stroud. Go take a Bryce Young. Maybe it's Will Levis. Maybe it's Tyler Van, whoever it ends up being. Go get one of the top quarterbacks in next year's draft. Pair them up with someone like a DK Metcalf, who I think they should extend. Move on from Tyler Lockett in my eyes, but even if you keep him, Metcalf, give him something that a young quarterback can work with. I think this team should embrace a bad season. And maybe that's why they decided to keep Pete Carroll, because he is a great locker room leader. He's a great culture guy. So maybe he's the guy to kind of weather the storm through a tough year ahead for Seattle. I've already talked about weeks 1 and 2. Seattle's just not as good as those squads. I'll have a pick up a win against Atlanta. I think both those teams are certainly vying for potentially picking number 1 overall next year. So talent level, it's pretty even. And Seattle at home, I'll give them the edge there. I'll have the Lions picking up a win here week 4. They're the home team. Give them a little bit of a home field advantage there. But again, two teams that are presumed bottom feeders this year, but I think the Lions are on the up and up while the Seahawks are still looking to get that momentum to propel them back towards the top. I think the Saints are a better team, so give New Orleans that win in week 5. We've already talked about week 6, week 7. The Chargers are clearly a better team. Seattle's had some success against the Giants, and I could see that being another example here, and I think the NFC West is a lot stronger than the NFC East, so we'll kind of go with the division strength there. Seahawks, better squad there at the bottom of the division versus the Giants being the same in the NFC East, at least as I think about it right now. So a win there in week 8. We already talked about week 9 as well. The Bucs, I'm not going to drone on about that one for all that long. Bye week, tough draw. The Raiders, better squad. Rams, better team. I think Seattle's better than Carolina, at least as I look at it right now, and we'll see, what happens with the quarterback position. If Carolina lands at Baker Mayfield, they decide, hey, we're going to swallow the pill. We're going to go, take on the contract of Baker Mayfield. We're going to give up an asset, and he's the starter at this time of the year. I'd probably flip this, but if it's Sam Darnold versus Geno Smith, and Seattle's at home, they might have the better quarterback and the home field advantage, and it's cross-country travel for Carolina. Now, granted, again, like I talked about a minute ago, I think it's more of an advantage for East Coast teams hosting West Coast squads, the other way around. But that being said, a lot of travel. Matt Rule could be down to his last final. Maybe we're talking about an interim head coach here for Carolina. A lot to try to map out this far in the future for the Panthers. So I think there's a little bit more stability in play here for Seattle, so I'll give them the edge there in week 14. I already talked about week 15. Chiefs, you've heard me say it 1,000 times, just a better team. And then the Jets, you could flip this game with Seattle, but I also don't think New York's going to go winless this year. So give the Jets a win there towards the end of the year. And I think Zach Wilson will start to figure it out as the year goes on, especially with his weapons. The chemistry will build, kind of similar to something else we talked about earlier on in this video. And then we've already talked about week 18. So a 4-13 record. Again, that feels about right with what I would have predicted. And I think this team should embrace that. Have a top 5 pick next year, land a potential franchise quarterback, and start this process all over again, like you did with Russell Wilson, a decade or so ago. But that is going to do it for my NFC West way too early regular season predictions. Tell me what you think down below in the comment section. Do you think I'm spot on? Do you think I'm wrong? How do you think the division shakes out 1 through 4? Love to have your thoughts. Love to talk some football with you down below in the comment section. I'll respond to every comment left down there. Hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. If you did, be sure to hit that like button to help me and my channel a ton. And if you're new around here, want to see more football content, just hit that big red subscribe button. That's going to do it for me. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Teej, and I'm signing off.